overworked and talented, and Dylan O'Brien is the brand new CEO who's kind of a sexist asshole. And they go on this work trip, the plane crashes, and they are the only two survivors stranded on a remote island. And while they're there, that power dynamic at work starts to suddenly shift the other direction. Now, I'm a huge fan of Sam Raimi. I didn't really grow up with the Evil Dead films, but over time I've grown to really love them. But Spider-Man especially was my bread and butter growing up, and then I've since watched every single film that this guy has done. Huge favorites like A Simple Plan, Drag Me to Hell was awesome, and I'm one of the few people that seems to really like Multiverse of Madness. And so when I found out that he was making a new movie, and you got Rachel McAdams in here as somebody who is going to be stranded on an island, and she's going to be maybe going crazy, maybe getting a little bit power hungry, I really wasn't sure what angle they were going to go. Sam Raimi, Rachel McAdams, that's all I need to know, and I was really excited for this movie. Now, the January release date did give a little bit of pause, but I'm somebody who actually thinks that January and February dumping ground rule is kind of a thing of the past. Now, we still have some movies that prove it true. I mean, we had Return to Silent Hill just a week ago, but then we had Bone Temple a week before that. So, is Send Help a movie that belongs in the traditional January slump dumping ground, or is this an awesome return to form for Sam Raimi? Well, you can bet your sweet ass it's that second one, baby. Starting off with the positives for Send Help, Rachel McAdams and Dylan O'Brien are incredible in this movie. It is such a small cast. Of course, you start off the first act with a few more people, but the lion's share of the screen time is just these two characters, their dynamic, their back and forth, their battling of wits, if you will. And Dylan O'Brien starts off this movie as such a hateable, irredeemable piece of shit that you pretty much plant your feet in the sand and say there is no way they're going to be able to do anything with this character to make me feel any sort of sympathy for him, to make me feel like there's any sort of redeeming factors at play, or even make me care about him surviving this situation. I just want to watch her fuck him up for 90 minutes. And you do get plenty of moments of that satisfaction of watching the guy who was on top suddenly at the bottom of the food chain, but he actually really surprised me with how genuinely funny he is in this movie. He kind of has like this cackle laugh, like anytime it came out, me and everybody else in my theater would laugh. His chemistry and his back and forth with Rachel McAdams is awesome, and how their dynamic very much evolves throughout the movie. I thought he was incredible, but it's Rachel McAdams' movie. She is the star of the show. There's a reason why she is the one on the posters, and they've got her name more and little up in like a log line of the movie. She is incredible. I mean, this is an actress that I've always enjoyed, and she's obviously had staying power. She's got plenty of iconic roles, whether it's Mean Girls or The Notebook. But she goes through such a transformation in this movie that it was hilarious to watch. She starts off, and she is such a, we'll just call it pathetic character, where she's like not very hygienic. She's like purposely kind of unattractive with the way that her hair is, and she's like got tuna salad sandwich sitting in the corner of her mouth, and she's so awkward and weird, and is very much somebody that is exaggerated, but it is somebody that if you work with them, whether they're the nicest person in the world or not, you would probably not care for them so much. She embodied that side of the role so well, and especially just the way that they have her made up. I mean, she is a gorgeous human being, and she is anything but at the beginning of this film. But physically and mentally, she goes through this awesome transformation when she's on this island, and she starts to realize that she's the one that holds the power. She's the one that has all the knowledge. She's a Survivor fan, so she knows how to like get water and how to spear fish and how to create shelter, which as a Survivor fan myself, that was a lot of fun too. And the way that she starts off so unassuming and somebody that just gets walked over constantly, day in and day out, and then slowly just start to change things where now she's the one making the demands, and she's the one dangling the carrot over the desperate Dylan O'Brien. She's the one who's like absolutely taking his mentality and just sticking it right in his ass throughout the entire film. Let's not forget, I'm your boss.
Not in the office anymore, Bradley.
And she's genuinely funny as well. Like, there is a lot of laughs in this movie. I would actually hesitate to fully call it a horror thriller, even though that's definitely the angle they're going to go with. I would almost think that it's more accurate to say that this movie's like a really dark comedy with some horror and thriller elements thrown in. because this is the funniest movie that Sam Raimi has ever made. I'll go on record and say that right now. There were so many times where you got laugh out loud moments in the theater, not only just because of a genuinely funny situation or a genuinely funny line of dialogue, but even that signature Sam Raimi craziness and zaniness where something just goes so far, so over the top that you get like that discomfort level of humor, where you're laughing at how ridiculous the thing it is that you're watching on screen. And even though this is predominantly a funny and enjoyable experience, in my opinion, there's still plenty of moments where they do get some really good tension. There's one scene in particular that I'm not going to spoil, you will know it when you get there, where it was the most on edge and the most that I have gripped my seat in a very long time watching a film. And you don't see anything. It's not like there's something gnarly or fucked up or freaky on screen. All you're watching is these two characters, just their face centered on screen, reversed. And it's the dialogue through Rachel McAdams' character and the sounds that you are hearing. That sequence was some of the most effective shit that I think Sam Raimi has ever done with so little. You've got Damian Shannon and Mark Swift here as the co-writers of this film, and they are also the ones that wrote Freddy vs. Jason, the Friday the 13th remake, which I'm huge fans of. And they have such a great script here. It is such a simple setup and a simple premise, but they get so much out of it. There's so much great dialogue. There's so many great situations that are both hilarious and tense between these two characters. It's a situation especially that so many people can identify with. Like, this movie triggered the fuck out of me. Maybe some of you have lucked out and have really struck gold and gotten a job where your boss, the CEO, your manager are these awesome people. They actually take care of you. The amount of work that you put into the company is how much praise and how much reward and how many promotions or raises you get out of that company. But with the exception of arguably one job that I've had my entire life, I have been fucked every single place that I have worked. I've always worked for the Dylan O'Briens. I work for the people that don't value the people beneath them, that they will squeeze every last drop out of you, and then whenever you quit, retire, or die of a fucking heart attack, they just replace you with the next person that they're going to bleed and wring dry like a wet fucking towel while they continue to climb the ladder. Those are the people that I have almost exclusive experience working with, especially with my most recent job that luckily I was able to leave and do. So there was so much, especially in the first act of this movie, that just had my blood boiling, where I was just like, I don't give a fuck how weird she is. That bitch better kill all of them. And the funny thing about that is, like, you definitely enter this movie totally on Rachel McAdams' side and totally against Dylan O'Brien. But Dylan O'Brien, if you really want to boil it down to something, like, he doesn't really do anything that's that horrific. He's just an asshole. Like, he's just something that's this rich, pompous prick. Maybe a little sexist or misogynistic, but he just does these small little microaggressions towards her. He does these little things to make fun of her and do something to mock her so she actually catches wind of. Like, they're tiny things. But in the world of somebody that deals with that on a constant basis, and that's the only way exclusively they are treated.
Need another pill.
Especially
The effect is
for them,
waning.
those
This
little
way, Doc.
microaggressions and those
I'll
little
show you where my
micro
stash
things
is.
become giant fucking atom bombs that are on a person's head. And they did such a good job at crafting this gameplay, just slowly ratcheting up the things that switch that power dynamic. And watching Rachel McAdams continue to realize all of these ways that she can now be that person.
What will truly make us gods if only our politicians could get out of their knuckle?
It is such an entertaining role. I've given him his flowers plenty of times in this video alone, but Sam Raimi really does inject a ton of style into this. Like, I really do think that he takes something that's very good in the surface and elevates it to something that's just going to be a genre knockout. It's going to be something that fans of his work and fans of these types of movies are going to love. And on the page, I'm sure some of these sequences where Sam Raimi really lets his freak flag fly, freak flag fly. I'm sure on the page those sequences were pretty simple, but he finds ways to go, oh no, we're going to Evil Dead the fuck out of this. We're going to drag you the fuck out of this. Like, these are the moments where we've had a lot of quieter moments, we've had a lot of more nail-biting sequences. Now we're going to get gross. And something that was such an important piece to this movie's tone was Danny Elfman's score. Now, Danny Elfman does a lot of work with Sam Raimi. He did the Spider-Man trilogy. And he's one of those composers that, of course, is one of the best. He's done some of the most iconic scores of all time. But there's a certain amount of Danny Elfman that I would say starts to feel a little repetitious, a little bit like it's versions of his previous work. This is a really unique score for Danny Elfman.
Oh dear.
And what I loved about it was you have a scenario, a screenplay, and even the performances of these actors that are very tonally different, where some parts are dead serious, some parts are really tense, some are very goofy and over the top and like borderline slapstick. And the score really informs you as the viewer throughout the movie, like where the tonal shifts are going to go, where the tonal shifts are coming from. And it really did do a good job at kind of ramping up the tense sequences, especially in a movie where most of the time you're just kind of sitting there with an evil grin on your face. The movie's also really well shot. Now, naturally, when you're stuck on a remote island, like that is isolation, but it's like the most beautiful version of isolation. So there's a lot of work that the nature is doing for them, but like I said with the score, the way that the movie is shot also really informs the different tonal shifts that we're going, where you have these more laid back, beautifully shot sequences of them on the beach, just kind of enjoying the high life while they're waiting to be rescued. Some of the more darker, tense sequences, you get some of those classic Sam Raimi kind of angles, Dutch angles, the way that he kind of zooms in on characters' faces to elicit a lot of those discomforting feelings that he likes to go for. And I even think that the way the movie's shot really does a good job at utilizing some of the more digital effects in the film. Now, I don't imagine that this was like a really high-budget movie. It feels like one of those smaller projects, but there's plenty of things in here you can tell we're getting a lot of heavy lifting from digital effects. There's animals in the movie, there's cliff sides and like some background sequences that you can tell are getting a lot of digital help, but they look pretty convincing. Even the ones that lean a little bit more on the silly, the way that they shoot it and the way that you have the tone of that sequence going, it feels like it fits. You know, it fits the more outlandish style of the more classic Sam Raimi sequences. And the last thing that I'll say here in the positives was that I really appreciated how simple this movie was. We don't really get a lot of movies nowadays that feel like they're this very basic premise that's just executed really well, especially in horror, which, you know, we'll just say this is a horror thriller for the sake of it. A lot of times nowadays, horror feels this need or this motivation to be like these grand concepts, to be like these really mind-bending concepts, or just to have so much social commentary, this dense idea. And we get wonderful movies out of that, but it does make it feel like horror movies and genre films sometimes are losing some of that simple pleasures that we used to love from movies in the past. And to me, this is like a throwback to that. This is just a very basic setup with two awesome actors just going toe-to-toe on screen, and then a lot of style injected from one of the most stylish and celebrated directors of all time. Moving on to the mix. Now, I did kind of address this a minute ago, so a piece of this might sound a little bit hypocritical, or a little bit contradictory, I should say. But there are some digital effects in this movie that do lean a little bit on the cartoonish side, which I think is predominantly because this is a movie that's supposed to be
Oh, my.
I did not watch the